Ladies and gentlemen, the March 19th, 2013 meeting of the Santa Barbara City Council Finance Committee will now come to order. Are there any members of the public wishing to speak on topics not on today's agenda yet within the jurisdiction of this committee? Seeing none, I will close public comment and move to the first agenda item.
And good afternoon. My name is Deirdre Randolph. I'm the Community Development Programs Supervisor. And today I'm going to give you a brief overview of the Housing Authority's proposed recapitalization of two of their senior projects and explain the city's role in that transaction due to specific requests made because the city has provided financing on the properties we'll be discussing. So the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Barbara has been working to recapitalize two of its existing low-rent senior housing projects. Villa La Cumbra is located at 521 North La Cumbra Road, and it has 60 units. And Shifco is located at 418 Santa Fe Place up on the Mesa, and it has 107 units. With this recapitalization, the Housing Authority will rehabilitate these projects to like-new condition and receive additional funds to meet the current and future needs of the Housing Authority. The recapitalized project is called Villa Santa Fe. So the transaction is structured as a purchase. It includes the purchase of the existing improvements on both properties by Villa Santa Fe Apartments LP and the continued ownership of the land by the Housing Authority. Through a leaseback and property management agreement, the Housing Authority remains the developer, the operator, and the manager of Villa Santa Fe. The purchase is funded by utilizing 4% low-income housing tax credits, tax-exempt bonds, and a new low-interest fixed-rate HUD-insured mortgage with a 35-year term that will replace the bonds 18 months after their issuance. In addition, to the extent other project funding sources cannot pay the sales price, rehabilitation costs, and other project costs in full, new Housing Authority financing is proposed on each property. The Housing Authority has secured a reservation of the tax credits for the combined project from the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee, and they do have a forward commitment for the bond allocation from the California Debt Limit Allocation Committee. Housing Authority expects a firm commitment of the FHA HUD-insured mortgage within the month. During the initial 15-year tax credit compliance period, the Housing Authority will maintain operational control of the properties by master leasing the improvements back from the LP. This model, using the wraparound lease, has been successful with other Housing Authority projects, including El Carrillo, Artisan Court, and Bradley Studios. The difference with this transaction is the FHA HUD-insured financing. The Housing Authority is making specific requests of the city to approve previous financing that was put in place originally by the former RDA. The former RDA assisted the Housing Authority when they purchased Villa La Cumbra with a loan in the amount of $886,700 with 3% interest. And at that time, our loan was subordinate to two other purchase money loans. Payments are due on a residual receipt basis, which is typical. And in Villa La Cumbra's 2011 program year, they were able to pay the city $5,000 per month in residual receipt payments. As of January 31st, the current balance is $1,167,224. This loan is due June 1st, 2030, and at the same time we recorded the loan, we recorded an affordable covenant with an expiration of 2060.
Ms. Randolph, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
So this payment has a due date in 2030. Currently, more is owed on it than the amount of the original loan because of interest accumulating. So would this loan ever be paid off? Is that...
Well, we have a plan for that.
Okay.
Which I'm going to get to
Very
shortly.
good. I won't impede you. Go ahead.
So we have some requests regarding the loan and the payment on that loan. The first request is that the city, as successor agency, subordinate the city loan to a new HUD-insured mortgage and to the new Housing Authority's second loan. And those amounts are shown on your screen. The second request is that, I did want to mention something. This subordination request was approved previously, in fact, back in October, by the loan committee. But this was before we had full understanding of all the HUD requirements. So the second request has to do with amending the term of the city loan. We would be extending it 18 years to match the maturity of the HUD loan. So instead of being due 2030, it would be due 2048. The third request is to amend the covenant and incorporate a required HUD rider. The rider essentially results in the subordination of the covenant to the HUD-insured loan. The affordability requirements contained in the covenant will also be required through the regulatory agreement, which is a component of the tax credit financing. And both the city's covenant and the tax credit regulatory agreement will be subordinate to the HUD regulatory agreement. The new payment plan. Okay. So the fourth request is that the city enter into a new payment agreement with the Housing Authority to pay the Villa La Cumbre loan. Under the HUD required form subordination, payment on the city loan is only permitted after payment of all operating costs, senior debt, and reserves. And under these terms, we don't think that we would receive any sort of residual receipt payments. So as a means to provide for the continued payment on the city loan, the Housing Authority has agreed to enter into a separate agreement with the city. This new agreement will create an unsecured obligation by the Housing Authority to make payments of $5,000 per month to the city out of non-Villa Santa Fe generated income. And this amount has been amortized and the loan would be paid in full in 2042. The terms of this agreement between the Housing Authority and the city has been fully disclosed to HUD, and in the event for some reason they don't approve this agreement, the loan will be paid in full.
Ms. Randolph?
Yes.
Would we be going from a secured to an unsecured obligation?
Yes, we would. And lastly, as far as Villa La Cumbre goes, the city did provide 2 separate CDBG grants on the property for rehabilitation of the roofing and gutters and partial roof replacement. These were grants. The Housing Authority completed all the repairs per the grant agreement. We always secure our grants with deeds of trust to secure performance. So we're requesting that both grant agreements and their respective deeds of trust be removed from title, be released. And similarly, on SHIFCO, the city has provided grants for rehabilitation over the years. Those have all been completed. They were grants never expected to be paid back. We did record deeds of trust, and the request is that we clear those from the title of SHIFCO as well. As far as long-term affordability, I kind of discussed this earlier. Both Villa La Cumbra and Shifco, under this new agreement, will continue to provide low-rent units for seniors. The city does not have a covenant currently on the Shifco property. And as I mentioned, the covenant on Villa La Cumbra, the city covenant, expires in 2060. But it will remain on title even though subordinate to the tax credit regulatory agreement and the HUD regulatory agreement. It's unlikely, however, that the city would have the same ability to enforce our covenant if for some, it will never happen, the housing authority defaulted on the loan. So, in conclusion, the new Villa Santa Fe financing enables the housing authority to continue to provide quality, affordable housing to current and future seniors for the next several decades. Staff recommends that your committee approve and recommend to council that they approve the following recommendations. In regard to 521 North La Cumbra, we recommend that you approve the subordination and the modification of that city loan. Approve the payment agreement. Approve the HUD rider to the Affordability Control Covenant. Approve the grant releases and reconveyances on both 521 North La Cumbra and Shifco, and of course authorize the Community Development Director to execute documents subject to city attorney approval. This concludes my presentation. We have with us today Bob Pearson from the Housing Authority, and we'll try to answer your questions.
Okay. Questions from committee members? Ms. Murillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Randolph, for your presentation. From reading it, I think there's minimal risk, but can someone just talk in general about the possible risk in this? It seems creative. Would I ask that to you?
Well, if you're talking about the affordability provisions, I think the way we've interpreted the HUD rider and their regulatory agreement, in the event of default, the HUD would look for a buyer who would buy the property subject to the affordability regulations. But the trick there is that in the event they couldn't find someone to purchase the property subject to those, we think that HUD has a provision that will allow them to sell to a profit to a non-affordable developer. And in that case, our interpretation of the documents is that both the tax credit regulatory agreement and the city's covenant could be extinguished.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. White, did you have any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. There's many things that I don't understand here. You mentioned the loan committee.
Mm-hmm.
Who is that?
The loan committee is comprised of the Community Development Director, the Assistant City Administrator, and the Director of Finance.
Okay. It's a new hat that I didn't know about. And then 4% low-income housing tax credits. What are they?
I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Thank you, Deirdre.
You want to come up here?
Sorry. It's been a while. Thank you, Deirdre. Good afternoon. My name is Bob Pearson. I'm the Finance Director for the Santa Barbara Housing Authority. Councilmember White, 4% tax credits are a provision in the federal tax code which allow low-income housing operators and developers to take advantage of tax credits so that we can get an award of a tax credit through a state commission that manages them on a state-by-state basis. So we have to go to a state commission here in California, and if we get awarded tax credits, they're essentially what they sound like, income tax credits that high net worth individuals can use to shield income from state and federal taxes, and we're allowed to actually take possession of those tax credits and then sell them to the highest bidder effectively. And people actually will, investors and high net worth individuals will actually bid on those tax credits, and in return for some very strict regulatory agreements and how the money must be spent and all of those things. It obviously must be public purpose. It must be for low-income housing.
For this project.
This type of
thing.
project, exactly.
So someone, let's just use $100. So somebody for $100 worth of these 4%
Tax
low-income housing tax credits, who would? So a rich person buys them for the $100 worth. How much would they pay, and how much would they get?
Well, for a $100 tax credit, they're going to get a tax credit of $100.
Okay.
And how much they pay varies with the market. It's like interest rates. But in this project, we're looking at over 95 cents on the dollar.
Okay, so they pay $95 to get $100 worth of deduction. Okay. Let's see. And I'm hearing that we're going from secured to unsecured. Oh, what could the $1 million be used for if it's one of the options is that the city just get paid off? Is that then part of that RDA sequestered, isolated money that it can only be used for housing purposes, or what?
I believe that that's true. It would be considered an RDA loan payoff, and it would go into that same fund.
Okay, and what would that be used for?
Well, ultimately, we want to build up that fund to promote more affordable housing. I know a portion of it is used to administer our monitoring and our compliance program.
Okay, so then, and is that, where is that administration compliance area? Is it in need of $1 million?
No, I think that I'm going to turn this over to Paul.
Mr. Chair and Councilmember White. So the redevelopment agency has gone away.
Right.
We have a successor agency, and we still have an affordable housing division of the community development department.
Right.
And the funds, if we took the $1 million loan back, I believe we still have to abide by the provisions of state law with regards to affordable monies, and I think they actually still reference the old redevelopment law about how you can use and reuse the money. Ms. Connect can scream if I'm way off base. But essentially it would come back as restricted money for affordable housing that we could either use to help support the administrative costs for our continued oversight, which is something we need to monitor now because we don't have any income that we used to have from the redevelopment agency, or it could be reused for another qualified affordable housing project. And if we reloaned the money out for a qualified affordable housing project, it could have a residual receipts payment similar to what we are getting now at $5,000 a month to have kind of a similar deal. So we feel pretty comfortable that either way we're going to be okay financially from our affordable housing programs and the income we need to kind of support our ongoing programs.
So that the cash use for administration, we're in strong enough shape. I mean, I frankly don't know what those numbers are at this point, or how much money's in hand. And maybe that would be something that would perhaps I can get together with you, and you can walk me through how that system works.
Yes, I will say that it's still an evolving. We're at a strong strength because we're only a year into this new world and that we're living in, and it's one of the things we're monitoring and watching closely, such that I think I would be concerned if we were to make $1 million grant with that money and not get any income to come back. I think as long as we maintain either the $5,000 or the interest accrual of having $1 million on the bank, we're feeling comfortable. I'm not feeling so comfortable that this $1 million is surplus that we could just grant out and not get any income back from it. That I would have concerns with.
Okay. And then what is the tax credit allocation committee?
Councilmember White, that is what I was referring to earlier, which is they are the state commission which is charged with allocating the limited amount of tax credits that are awarded to the state of California by the federal government.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Those are all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there is there any conceivable way in which something could go wrong with this, what is to me a fairly complex undertaking, that would result in any risk to the general fund?
Good question.
No.
I hate to never say never, but no, offhand, I mean, the $1 million loan, we feel pretty comfortable that we're either going to get an unsecured $5,000 a month payment or they'll pay us the lump sum. Going down the road, there could be a concern that for whatever reason the Housing Authority is not able to continue to make payments on that $1 million. And to really kind of play how could it potentially impact the general fund, I guess you could get to a scenario if the Housing Authority gets into a difficult situation, is unable to keep making payments on all their outstanding loans and the residual receipt income, and we wanted to maintain an affordable housing monitoring program, and we've run out of a cash flow to support that, then that perhaps becomes a question for the general fund to have to support. That's one scenario.
Okay.
But these are kind of, we think for the most part, working on good assumptions going forward, we don't think there's a risk to the general fund unless something really quite drastic happens.
Okay. Very good. Any other questions? Okay. Mr. White?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I kind of am hearkening back to the last affordable housing refi that we had, of just trying to look at it from, and I think Mr. Francisco's questions were kind of mixing in there too. Is this a good financial idea for the city? It doesn't, to go from secured to unsecured and add 15 years to the life of a loan is not a direction that I, as a business person, would consider accommodating a refi, even if it does result in is it a 1% increase? Is it going from 3 to 4%? No, it's just same, 3 to 3. That's a downgrade. It's just a downgrade of the quality of the loan in every way. And I appreciate that this bag of money and resources works differently than other resources. I certainly support all. I mean, the getting rid of the deeds of trust that's just housekeeping stuff. But the change from secured to unsecured and lengthening the life of the loan, those are not things that are good regular world business decisions to make. However, obviously this is a different element. I love that we're refinancing things. Frankly, I don't have a worry about SHIFCO becoming a market rate condo project or anything like that. It's just those things. If the world falls that far enough apart, perhaps it would be a good idea, because it might get more money for the city or the housing authority to finance its other operations as they're all sinking or going up in flames or whatever they're doing. But so that it's that context of this other world that I'm supportive of going forward with this, unless I hear comments to the contrary.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could.
Yes, please.
This is a complicated deal. I don't want to give any perception otherwise. It is.
Yeah.
It's a new way of bringing revenue in. But I just want to respond to a couple of your comments so that we're really clear. One, the loan is remaining secured on the new property. This HUD rider says that we can't get residual receipts until it meets certain thresholds, which we think is maybe 15, 16 years down the road. So we're making a side unsecured agreement with the Housing Authority where they're going to start making payments right away. So there still is a secured portion of this loan. It's just, it is in a less favorable position because we wouldn't get the income stream. And so we're making this alternate agreement that we are waiting HUD's approval to say they're good with that. But there still is a portion of the loan that remains secured. So the loan isn't becoming completely unsecured. That's one comment.
Okay.
The other comment of, we're extending the term of the loan, and I agree with all that. I don't have any questions with that. And Mr. Pearson might have the financial numbers. However, with our partner, the Housing Authority, they're getting additional money out of this deal than they have before. And so we kind of look at it in the partnership that, yes, from our specific purpose, we're extending the term of the loan, and it's not quite as a good deal. But the Housing Authority is benefiting quite a bit from this and bringing additional new revenue.
Right.
into the community to support affordable housing. And so we think that package deal is a good deal.
And your point's a good one, that these tax credits and such like, I know that that's the kind of thing that the Housing Authority has done in the past to create these projects. They're cobbling together a range of funding sources. And so from that perspective, if this $1 million is helping to basically gain grants, I mean, virtually speaking grants, then, that's a good thing. And obviously it's an alphabet soup of sources here. So, going against any business sense on this, it's going to the support of the Housing Authority. I can go along with this package.
Ms. Murillo, did you have any comments?
Yes, to Councilmember White, it's not a business. This is government, and we're providing housing in a creative way after the loss of redevelopment. So I'd like to move that we recommend this to the City Council. Alphabet soup, A, B, C, D, E, and F. Thank you.
And I second that, and I agree. This is not a business. However, it's not a bad idea to look at each one of our financial decisions and its implications. And that's kind of one of the ways that government has gotten itself in the hole that has been created for itself, is by not thinking of itself as a business.
Thank you.
And I cannot disagree with you, Mr. White. And I do think it's a good idea to try to look at the details of this to the extent that we can. We are the Finance Committee, and to question these things. And I'm sure there are things about this that don't make business sense, but of course this money can't be used for profitable enterprises anyway. It really is allocated solely to affordable housing. So I feel comfortable with where this is going. So if there are no further comments or questions, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.